Clara's sensible shoes betrayed her on cobblestones, 60 Years of Grace undone by a rogue paperback jutting from her bag. She tumbled straight into a kaleidoscope of laughter, scarves flapping like victory flags around Camden's pop-up bookstalls. A stranger's grip caught her elbow, fingers bore ink stains and a wedding band worn thin. Steady, legend, someone murmured as her vintage Wolfe novel skidded into a pile of dog-eared memoirs. Around her, spines cracked with purpose, women swapping stories with books as currency. Grief tucked Clara's sensible shoes betrayed her again, 60 years of London living, and still, cobblestones mocked her balance. She clutched that old novel, its spine cracked like her own after months of grief. Rain speckled its cover, blending with smudges left by fingers long gone. Inside, margin notes whispered in a familiar hand, each scribble a ghost nudging her forward. She hesitated outside bookshop, its windows glowing like a promise. A poster advertised community book swap and tea, and for a breath, fear coiled in her chest. What if words failed her now? Grief had turned her into a library with locked doors, every memory a volume too heavy to reopen. But then, laughter spilled onto street, warm as chai her fam loved. Stepping in, Clara inhaled paper and bergamot. Shelves bowed under well-loved spines, and strangers traded paperbacks with ease of old friends. No one pitied her silver hair or fumbling hands. Here, stories were great equalizer. She ran a thumb over her novel's frayed edge, once a shared treasure, now a bridge. By evening's end, she left lighter, someone else's dog-eared mystery tucked under her arm. Rain had eased, pavement gleaming like a fresh page. Clara smiled. Maybe healing wasn't about forgetting, but finding new hands to hold weight. Clara's sensible shoes betrayed her on cobblestones. 60 years of London living hadn't prepared her for how grief could unsteady a person. That morning, she'd clutched an old novel, its spine cracked from years of love, and wandered into a bookshop on a whim. Not for a purchase, but for air thick with stories instead of silence. Inside, shelves stretched like city alleys, each corner promising escape. A handwritten sign caught her eye. Community book swap, bring one, take one, stay a while. Her fingers traced frayed edges of that novel, its pages yellowed with time. Letting go felt like losing him all over again. But then a woman with silver-streaked curls and a sweater that screamed retired librarian chic nudged her elbow. First-timer jitters? Happens to best of us. No pity in her voice, just camaraderie. Creator hesitated, then surrendered her book. In return, she grabbed a dog-eared copy of Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Light, hopeful, everything she wasn't. Woman, Maggie, as it turned out, grinned. Perfect choice. We meet Tuesdays. Biscuits included. Tuesdays became Clara's anchor. Each week, she arrived early, savoring ritual, stacking chairs, brewing tea, stealing glances, unfamiliar titles. Group was a patchwork, a young mum processing loss, a bloke who quoted Austen like football stats, even a cheeky teen who called them all fam and made woman snort into her Earl Grey. Grief, she learned, wasn't a solo journey but a shared shelf where every story had space. One evening, Maggie handed her a memoir. Your turn to lead discussion. Clara's pulse spiked. 60 years old and she'd never spoken in front of strangers without tripping over words. But as she flipped through pages, something shifted. Book wasn't just paper, it was a bridge. She scribbled notes in margins, underlining passages that echoed her own heart. When Tuesday came, her voice wavered only once. By summer's end, woman didn't just attend book club, she ran it. Maggie, ever schemer, forgot her glasses every week so woman would take charge. They hosted themed nights, tearjerkers and tiramisu, mysteries and muffins. Shop's owner, a wiry man with a penchant for Dickens, even let them display favorites in front window. Clara's old novel found its way onto that shelf, its cracked spine now a badge of honor. One rainy afternoon, as she rearranged displays, a newcomer hovered near swap pile, clutching a book like a lifeline. Creator recognized that grip, fear of letting go, of stepping into unknown. She handed her a biscuit. First-timer jitters, woman blinked. How'd you know? Clara smiled. Just a hunch. Grief, she realized, wasn't something to outrun in sensible shoes. It was a story waiting to be read and rewritten together. Clara's sensible shoes betrayed her on cobblestones, 60 years of London living, and still she stumbled. This time, though, it wasn't just uneven pavement tripping her up. Grief had a way of tilting world sideways. She clutched an old novel under one arm, its spine cracked like her resolve some days. Inside bookshop, warmth seeped into her bones. Shelves bowed under stories waiting to be shared, and a handwritten sign announced community book swap, bring one, take one. Not exactly revolutionary, but for Clara, it felt like throwing a lifeline into choppy waters. She'd spent months drowning in silence, avoiding well-meaning neighbors who treated her like fragile china. 60 wasn't dead, damn it. She could still out stubborn melancholy. Setting her novel on swap table, a dog-eared copy of Middlemarch with margin notes in her late husband's messy scrawl, she hesitated. Letting go of it seemed like losing him all over again. But then a woman with silver-streaked curls nudged her elbow, swapping Middlemarch for a battered Joy Luck Club. Fam says this one's a gut punch, stranger murmured before vanishing into stacks. Creator blinked. Maybe grief wasn't meant to shouldered alone. Maybe stories could be stepping stones across ache. Over next weeks, she returned, trading books and tentative smiles. She discovered dog-eared mysteries left by retirees, feminist manifestos tucked between cookbooks by young mums, even a sci-fi paperback with a sticky note. This got me through divorce, hope it helps. Each swap felt like a quiet rebellion against isolation. One rainy Tuesday, she caught herself laughing a memoir's dark humor, then froze. Joy still existed. By summer's end, Creator didn't just visit bookshop, she ran its grief reading group. Not some weepy circle, mind you. They debated flawed heroines, roasted sappy endings, and once, memorably, staged a dramatic reading of bad sex scenes from vintage romances. Laughter lines deepened around her eyes. That old Middlemarch never resurfaced in swaps. Clara liked to imagine it was traveling, passing through hands like a shared secret. Meanwhile, she kept turning pages, stubborn as ever, proving even grief had chapters left to write. Clara's sensible shoes had betrayed her on cobblestones, 60 years of London living, and still she stumbled. But today, wobbling past a weathered bookshop, something caught her eye, a tattered copy of Middlemarch propped in window, its spine cracked like her own after months of grief. Without thinking, she pushed inside, ignoring skeptical glance from a millennial clerk scrolling his phone. She hadn't planned to start a book club. Yet there she was, 3 weeks later, slapping that same Middlemarch onto a wobbly table community center, surrounded by strangers clutching their own dog-eared paperbacks. She'd scrawled on a post-it. No frills, no fuss, just stories as lifelines. First, it was chaos. A retired banker wept over remains of day. A young mum admitted she'd only read cereal boxes since her loss. Clara fumbled, spilling tea on her blouse, classic, but kept going. Then came her gutsy move, a book swap. Not just any swap, each person had to inscribe why their novel mattered. Vulnerability, in ink. Skeptic. Marjorie, 72, who'd scoffed into her scarf week one. Sentimental nonsense. But when Clara handed her a copy of Gilead, annotated by a widowed firefighter, Marjorie froze. Tears hit page. Room erupted in sniffles and, somehow, laughter. Someone snapped a photo. By month's end, that photo had gone quietly viral. A local paper called it Lit Cure. Clara, now slightly famous in her zip code, stood taller in those sensible shoes. Home, she opened her own novel, a blank journal, and penned first line. No longer just a widow, just a retiree. She was writing her own story. And fam. London was reading along. Old Middlemarch stayed on table, its spine holding them all together. Clara's sensible shoes had betrayed her once, but 60 years of London grit kept her upright. Grief had curled her inward, but dog-eared pages of an old novel, her late husband's favorite, whispered rebellion. She'd stacked it on a park bench with a note, "Take me. Read me. Pass me on." By week's end, strangers left replies in margins, their inky confessions stitching her back together. So began her book swap, a rogue act of hope. She commandeered a corner in a Bloomsbury bookshop, bribing manager with lemon drizzle cake, her odd habit, baking when nervous. Soon, women arrived, some widowed, Others just weary, clutching paperbacks like life rafts. Clara guided them, not with pity, but with dogged mischief. Swap sorrow for stories, she'd insist, sliding a mystery novel toward a tearful newcomer. Misery loves company, but joy throws better parties. Months in, her original novel returned, bloated with sticky notes and coffee stains. A teenager had dragged it through Camden Market, a nurse read it on night shifts. Clara traced their fingerprints, her throat tight. This wasn't just a book, it was a relay race against loneliness. By 62, she'd turned grief into a verb. Bookshop events spilled onto pavements, strangers becoming fam over dog-eared thrillers and scones. Clara's laugh, a honk she'd once stifled, now led chorus. Even her shoes, still sensible, learned to dance. Grab a book. Leave your mark.